The entire crowded dining room dropped into an uncomfortable silence the exact second everyone realized what was happening. My friends sitting a few tables away were fully expecting me to burst out laughing, blurt out some terrible excuse, or sprint toward the exit after catching sight of the woman sitting alone by the window. Instead, several bystanders actually wiped tears from their eyes as I gently pulled out the velvet chair directly across from her, offered her a warm, genuine smile, and treated her with the respect that every single human being inherently deserves. You must subscribe to this channel right now and watch this entire video until the very end, because this story proves how a single choice can completely dismantle cruelty. Before we go any further, please leave a comment sharing your current location or your local time, because I love seeing where in the world our incredible community is tuning in from today. My name is Nathan, and for years I lived a quiet, structured life in the heart of Columbus, Ohio, where my days revolved almost entirely around my high-demand career as a commercial architect. After going through a long spell of isolation, my colleagues constantly teased me about my non-existent dating life, claiming I spent way too much time staring at blueprints instead of building a real future with someone special. What I did not know at the time was that a few of my toxic coworkers had secretly arranged a setup, believing the entire scenario would serve as a hilarious piece of office entertainment. They fully anticipated that I would turn right around and walk out the door the moment I set eyes on my surprise date. They had absolutely no idea how drastically their cruel little game was about to backfire on them. When I stepped through the heavy wooden doors of the restaurant that evening, the first thing that caught my attention was a radiant smile glowing across the room before I even registered anything else about her appearance. Sitting quietly near the window was a woman named Grace, dressed in an elegant pastel blue dress, her soft brown eyes carrying a deep underlying sadness that was barely hidden behind her gentle demeanor. She stood up nervously when she noticed me walking toward her table, clearly bracing herself for yet another painful moment of instant rejection before our evening had even officially started. Her hands were trembling slightly as she offered a faint greeting, revealing just how many times she had already endured the bitter sting of shallow judgment in her past. As we settled into our seats and began looking over the menus, the thick, awkward tension in the air slowly melted away into something surprisingly natural and uplifting. Instead of dealing with uncomfortable pauses or forced small talk, we found ourselves laughing like old friends and genuinely curious about each other's lives and passions. Grace shared that she worked as a dedicated children librarian, spending her days organizing community reading programs and pouring her heart into encouraging young kids from low-income families to dream far beyond their current hardships. Every single story she told reflected an incredible depth of empathy and character that could never possibly be measured by a silly physical standard or society's harsh expectations. As I listened to her speak with so much passion, my mind kept drifting back to a painful chapter from my own past involving my younger sister Sarah. Years ago, after surviving a severe chronic illness, the heavy medical treatments Sarah relied on caused her body to change dramatically, leading to significant weight gain that she could not control. I was forced to watch in helpless frustration as complete strangers whispered mean comments behind her back. Close friends gradually vanished from her life, and even our own relatives began treating her like a lesser person. Sarah was easily the brightest spark in our family, yet she slowly began believing she was unlovable simply because people judged her cover instead of reading her heart before she tragically passed away years later. Looking across the table at Grace, I instantly recognized that exact same guarded, cautious expression my sister used to wear whenever she was bracing for impact from a cold world. Midway through our meal, one of my coworkers, who was watching from the bar, foolishly let slip the truth about why this date had been set up in the first place. The whole evening was never meant to be a genuine attempt at helping two single adults connect. It was engineered as a mean-spirited prank with a group of onlookers waiting to watch me humiliate her. A heavy darkness settled over our table as Grace softly dropped her gaze toward her lap, silently preparing herself to gather her things and walk away in total shame. Instead of letting that happen, I stood up, slowly walked over to her side of the table and quietly pulled up a chair right next to her to sit shoulder to shoulder. I looked her in the eyes, thanked her sincerely for giving me her precious time, and turned toward the watching crowd to state firmly that the only embarrassing thing in the room was judging a person's worth based on their physical appearance. The entire dining area went dead quiet, with several patrons looking down at their plates in sudden shame while others openly wept at the raw honesty of the moment. For the first time in their lives, those shallow coworkers were forced to confront the harsh reality that their harmless joke had inflicted severe emotional damage on a gentle soul. From that unforgettable evening forward, Grace and I began spending an incredible amount of time together, gradually building a foundation rooted in trust, shared values, and deep mutual respect. We spent our weekends exploring nature trails across Ohio, volunteering at local food pantries, visiting old bookstores, and getting actively involved in service projects through our local church community. She showed me how to cultivate true patience during my stressful work weeks, while I made it my personal mission to remind her every single day that her value as a human being had nothing to do with a number on a scale. Together, we discovered that true emotional healing begins the moment you stop focusing on the surface and start appreciating the human spirit underneath. Eventually, Grace decided completely on her own terms that she wanted to adopt a healthier lifestyle, not to satisfy the expectations of a superficial world, but simply because she wanted to feel energized and strong. I walked alongside her through every single step of that challenging personal journey, joining her for early morning walks and helping her prepare nutritious meals throughout the week. There were plenty of difficult days filled with emotional exhaustion, self-doubt, and temporary setbacks. But this time her efforts were never motivated by a desperate need to earn someone's love or approval. She was pursuing self-improvement from a place of deep self-respect, fully aware that she was already deeply cherished and complete exactly as she was. A full year later, our church held a massive summer community gathering, and several of the very same co-workers who had orchestrated that foolish prank happened to be in attendance. They were visibly stunned when they saw us walk in together. Not merely because Grace had transformed physically, but because the radiant joy and confidence radiating from both of us was completely undeniable. The very people who had once snickered in the back of that restaurant approached us with tearful eyes, offering sincere apologies and admitting that watching us that night had completely fundamentally changed how they treat other people. Standing proudly beside Grace in front of everyone, I realized that true elegance had never been about wearing a certain designer dress size or fitting into a rigid mold. Real beauty had entered that restaurant a year prior, carrying incredible resilience, deep compassion, unconditional forgiveness, and a golden heart that refused to turn bitter despite years of cruel treatment. That unexpected blind date was supposed to be the most humiliating setup of my entire life, but it ended up becoming the greatest blessing that ever crossed my path. Sometimes the very individuals that society casually overlooks are the ones who teach us the most profound lessons about unconditional love, human dignity, and authentic inner strength. If this story moves you today, please drop a comment with the single word kindness to show the world that everyone deserves dignity. And remember that real love will always shine brighter than shallow prejudice.